Cold, mud, and snow won't stop you and your e-bike? Or do you want to get your e-bike safely through the winter? Then I'll tell you in this video what you need to consider. Winter is just around the corner, and with it, inevitably, several challenges will come our way in the near future. Let's first take a look at how you should best equip your electric bicycle to make it properly and safely ready for winter. If you say you'd rather not ride your bike during winter, feel free to check the timeline below and skip to the end of the video. There, we'll discuss everything you need to do if you want to store your e-bike over the winter. In general, when you are out with the e-bike in winter or in wet or snowy conditions, you should always avoid getting dirt, grime, water, moisture and salt on the e-bike. That's why it's the perfect opportunity, or absolutely recommended, to equip your e-bike with mud guards so you can shield the components you have as much as possible. This also simplifies maintenance in the end because you have less dirt on the frame and components. So, for winter, perhaps get some clip-on mudguards that you can easily install and, if you like, remove again in the spring. Furthermore, you can protect your e-bike with various covers, for example made of neoprene, which you can wrap around the down tube. This protects your frame from stone chips caused by gravel as well as moisture, and also keeps the battery a bit warmer if you have a down tube battery. This can definitely extend the range and protects the cells. There are also special covers just for frame batteries, but also for displays and other components. These covers provide additional protection in rain, snow, or even hail, depending on how tough you are and when you ride. They can be easily attached and don't cost a fortune, simply an additional safety measure when things get a bit uncomfortable. Just like with a car, tires are a really important topic for your e-bike in winter. You need to think about the conditions you want to ride in and where you will be using your e-bike. Based on that, you can choose an all-season tire solution such as the Schwalbe Johnny Watts 365, which already has 365 in its name, works well all year round, has a decent width, a nice tread, and the 4 Seasons Addicts compound, which ensures good grip on all surfaces throughout the year. Especially if you are traveling or living in southern countries, then something like this is completely sufficient there. Or the Schwalbe Marathon 365, which provides a good riding experience all year round and even in wet conditions. For those who live further north or plan to be out and about in snow and ice, it is definitely recommended to fit studded tires in winter. Here too, Schwalbe has some in its range with the Icebiker tires, and the Schwalbe Marathon is also available as a Winter Plus edition with studded tires. So, if there's a lot of snow where you are and you want to continue riding your e-bike, then these are the right tires for you. The last tip for equipping your e-bike in winter, and actually for the whole year, is definitely a proper lighting system, which is of course particularly important in the winter months as it gets dark early and you will be traveling in the dark a lot, but it should also work well during the day, or in other words, not only provide visibility at night but also during the day. Here I can make 2 recommendations for the front light. The Supernova Mini 3 headlight, a really compact front light with 500 lumens and 125 lux, also available as a Pro version which comes with a separate high beam switch. And as a price performance tip, the Light Move RX E90 with high beam for around €80. Feel free to check them out in our shop or contact our customer service if you would like further advice. Now that we have perfectly set up and thoroughly prepared your e-bike for the challenges of winter, a second important point is, of course, to get yourself completely ready for winter with appropriate clothing. There are plenty of accessories like these arm warmers that you can simply slip over your arms. This way you will get a bit more warmth on your rides in the cold. Of course, these are also available as leg warmers for your legs. In addition, we also recommend using a cap or a face mask to protect your head. Ideally, it should be something you can wear under your helmet, because you should never ride your bike without a helmet. So this is also an absolute winter must-have. Additionally, of course, a good windproof jacket that protects you from the rain as well as the cold and the wind when you're traveling on your e-bike. When buying suitable winter clothing, make sure that you are visible and that you have reflectors so that you can be seen easily. If you're wearing very dark clothing like me, then it's also advisable to wear an additional high visibility reflective vest that you can simply pull on to increase your visibility and in the end, of course, your safety. Your winter outfit is completed with a pair of decent and comfortable gloves, which you can choose according to the weather conditions you are in. Extra thick or maybe slightly thinner if it's not that cold. Are you looking for another activity besides e-biking in winter? Then I definitely recommend subscribing to our channel, because there you get the most important information about e-bikes on a regular basis and exciting tips on how to maintain or upgrade your e-bike. And now, let's continue with our tips for e-biking in winter. Even the best equipment for you and your e-bike is useless if you are careless or thoughtless when traveling in difficult weather conditions. Therefore, here are some important tips on how you should behave in winter. Very important, brake moderately, because especially the current disc brakes are relatively unaffected by weather, wet conditions, and slippery surfaces, which means the brakes are perfect at any time of day or night. However, if the surface is slippery, snowy, or icy, you can quickly start to slip. So always apply the brakes a little more carefully and, of course, also ride at a slower speed to suit the road conditions. In case of doubt, choosing an e-bike with an ABS system, which for example Bosch currently offers relatively extensively, can also help for year-round use. Simply to prevent the front wheel from slipping, this may be an option if you are planning to buy an e-bike and use it all year round. Of course, always switch on the lights in winter at any time of day or night to increase visibility even more. In winter, it's best to simply leave the lights switched on at all times, so that even if you ride into the dusk, you can't somehow forget to switch it on. And most e-bikes have the lights switched on automatically anyway when you turn on the bike. And usually you shouldn't need to worry about your e-bike battery having not enough capacity left. While we were on the subject of road conditions, particularly difficult road conditions are of course foliage. Especially now in the transition period from autumn to winter, there are a lot of leaves on the roads which block your visibility of the surface, like potholes, roots and so on. And of course, when it's wet and slippery, where you simply have to be careful, reduce your speed or try to avoid roads where there is a lot of foliage. And also during winter, there is an increased risk of slipping on manhole covers or metal tram rails. It's best to ride well around those or only cross them very slowly. The same applies to cobblestones, which are even more dangerous in wet and slippery conditions. So perhaps look for an alternative route if you're traveling on a cobbled road every day. Just try to bear this in mind when traveling by e-bike in winter. When you return home or reach your destination or wherever you are headed, a small check afterwards is always advisable during winter. Is there any coarse dirt, coarse grime? If there has been snow, any snow residue still stuck to the e-bike? It's best to remove these directly with a glove or your foot or whatever, so that they don't stick to the e-bike for a long time. Of course, store the e-bike in a dry and warm place. And if possible, always take the e-bike battery inside so that it's not exposed to unnecessary cold. What's also important to note is that if you take the e-bike battery indoors to charge, allow the battery to reach room temperature before plugging it into the charger. The battery will naturally get cold outside. Just give it half an hour or a whole hour before you connect it to the charger. This protects the cells and ensures safe charging in the end. This is another important tip for handling the battery in winter. If you now regularly ride your beloved bike or e-bike in winter, it simply requires a little more care and more thorough checking than perhaps in the drier season. So be sure to check all safety relevant components regularly, such as brakes and gears, to see if they are still working and if the wear is still within limits. Especially with the brake system, the brake pads may be worn or the brake disc may have become too thin. You can usually find the information about the minimum thickness printed directly on the brake discs. Furthermore, it's important to regularly clean the bicycle or e-bike from dirt and grime so that it doesn't remain on the e-bike unnecessarily long. In this case, also keep the components thoroughly clean and apply chain wax or chain oil moderately but more frequently than in summer. As always, it's important to wipe off any excess oil or wax afterwards. Furthermore, you should always keep an eye on the air pressure in the tires and fork dampers, as differences can happen during winter because of varying temperatures and sometimes extreme temperature fluctuations. So check with the pump a little bit more frequently to see if it still matches your desired setup. And finally, as winter gradually and slowly comes to an end, you can check on the bike if the drivetrain components like sprockets, cassette or chain might need replacing. This means perhaps renewing the entire drivetrain at some point. Then you'll be well equipped for the upcoming season and can start spring off great. If you're now saying, oh no, it's winter, I'd rather stay at home in the warm or go to work by car or public transport, then of course you should also store the e-bike properly. It's important to thoroughly clean and completely dry the e-bike before you store it in a safe and warm place. We just talked about in detail what to pay attention to when storing it. Also, lubricate it a little bit so it doesn't wear unnecessarily over the winter. And as I just mentioned, it's best to store it dry and warm, preferably indoors. Park the e-bike at room temperature if possible. If in doubt and you have no place to store it safely indoors, use a bike cover or a bike garage that you can pull over the bicycle to protect it from the weather in winter. It's also very important to remove the e-bike battery and gradually discharge it to about 40 to 60% beforehand. That's a good level at which you can store it at home for several weeks or months. Definitely take it indoors and store it securely at room temperature so the cells stay fresh and nothing should happen to the battery. Some batteries, like those from Panasonic, automatically enter a so-called hibernation or sleep mode after a certain period. So the battery also senses, okay, it's winter time, and it sort of takes itself offline. and then in spring just put it back in the e-bike to ride the first kilometers. If you have a personal pro tip for everyone out there on the topic of e-biking in winter, feel free to write it in the comments. We are happy to answer any remaining questions. If you don't want to miss any more videos, subscribe to the channel, leave a like for this video if you enjoyed it, and then have fun and get through the winter well.